Hello, and welcome to Ms. PM Reads Christian Content, where we are continuing in our story, All's for the Best by T.S. Arthur. And in our last video, we went ahead and read a little extra to conclude the story of the seamstress Mary Carson and her unfortunate demise as she succumbed to pneumonia. We are on to a new story in the book at this point, chapter 10, The Nursery Maid. I did not feel in very good humor either with myself or with Polly, my nursery maid. The fact is, Polly had displeased me, and I, while under the influence of rather excited feelings, had rebuked her with a degree of intemperance not exactly becoming a Christian gentlewoman, or just to a well-meaning, though not perfect domestic. Okay. Polly had taken my sharp words without replying. They seemed to stun her. She stood for a few moments after the vials of my wrath were emptied, her face paler than usual, and her lips almost colorless. Then she turned and walked away from my room with a slow but firm step. There was an air of purpose about her and a manner that puzzled me a little. The thermometer of my feelings was gradually falling, though not yet reduced very far below fever heat, when Polly stood again before me. A red spot now burned on each cheek, and her eyes were steady as she let them rest in mine. "Mrs. Wilkins," she said, firm yet respectfully, "I am going to leave when my month is up." Now, I have my own share of willfulness and impulsive independence, so I answered without hesitation or reflection, "Very well, Polly. If you wish to leave, I will look for another to fill your place." And I drew myself up with an air of dignity. Polly retired as quickly as she came, and I was left alone with not very agreeable thoughts for companions. Polly had been in my family for nearly 4 years in the capacity of nurse and chambermaid. She was capable, faithful, kind in her disposition, and industrious. The children were all attached to her, and her influence over them was good. I had often said to myself, in view of Polly's excellent qualities, she is a treasure. And always the thought of losing her services had been an unpleasant one. Of late, in some things, Polly had failed to give the satisfaction of former times. She was neither careful, cheerful, nor thoughtful, nor had her usual patience with the children. Her disposition is altering, I said to myself now and then, in a view of this change. Something has spoiled her. "You have indulged her too much, I suppose," was the reason given by my husband whenever I ventured to introduce to his notice the shortcomings of Polly. "You are an expert at the business of spoiling domestics." My good opinion of myself was generally flattered by this estimate of the case, and as this good opinion strengthened, a feeling of indignation against Polly for her ingratitude, as I was pleased to call it, found a lodging in my heart. And so the matter had gone on from small beginnings until a state of dissatisfaction on the one part and coldness on the other had grown up between mistress and maid. I asked no questions of Polly as to the change in her manner, but made my own inferences and took for granted my own conclusions. I had spoiled her by indulgence, that was clear. As a thing, of course, this was not very favorable to a just and patient estimate of her conduct, whenever it failed to meet my approval. On the present occasion, she had neglected the performance of certain services, in consequence of which I suffered some small inconvenience and a great deal of annoyance. "I don't know what's come over you, Polly," I said to her sharply. "Something has spoiled you outright, and I tell you now, once for all, that you'll have to mend your ways considerably if you expect to remain much longer in the family. The language was hard, but the manner harder and more offensive. I had never spoken to her before with anything like the severity now used. The result of this intemperance of speech on my part, the reader has seen. Polly gave notice that she would leave, and I accepted the notice. For a short time after the girl retired from my room, I maintained a state of half indignant independence. But as to be satisfied with myself, that was out of the question. I had lost my temper, and as is usual in such cases, had been harsh, and it might be unjust. I was about to lose the service of a domestic whose good qualities so far overbalanced all defects and shortcomings that I could hardly hope to supply her place. How could the children give her up? This question came home with a most unpleasant suggestion of consequences. But as the disturbance of my feelings went on subsiding, the thought grew clearer and clearer that which most troubled me was a sense of injustice towards Polly. The suggestion came stealing into my mind that the something wrong about her might involve a great deal more than I had, in a narrow reference of things to my own affairs, imagined. Polly was certainly changed, but might not the change have its origins in mental conflict or suffering, which entitled her to pity and consideration instead of blame? This was a new thought, which in no way tended to increase a feeling of self-approval. She is human, like the rest of us, said I, as I sat talking over the matter with myself, and every human heart has its portion of bitterness. The weak must bear in weakness, as well as the strong in strength, and the light burden rests as painfully on the back that bends in feebleness as does the heavy one on Atlas's shoulders. We too apt to regard those who serve us as mere working machines. Rarely do we consider them possessing like wants and weaknesses, like sympathies and yearnings with ourselves. Anything will do for them under any external circumstances is their duty to be satisfied. Wow. Okay, sign of the times when this was written quite some time ago. All right, I was wrong in this matter. Nothing was now clearer to me than this, but how was I to get it right? That was the puzzling question. I thought and thought, looking at the difficulty first on this side and then on that. No way of escape presented itself except through some open or implied acknowledgement of wrong. That is, I must have some plain, kind talk with Polly to begin with, and thus show her by an entire change of manner that I was conscious to have spoken to her in a way that was not met by my own self-approval. Pride was not slow in vindicating her own position among the mental powers. She was not willing to see me humble myself. She was not willing to see me humble myself to a servant. Okay. Polly had given notice that she was going to leave, and if I made concessions, she would at once conclude that I did so meanly from self-interest because I wished to retain her services. My naturally independent spirit revolted under this review of the case, but I marshaled some of the better forces of my mind and took the field bravely on the side of right and duty. For some time, the conflict went on. Then the better elements of my nature gained the victory. When the decision was made, I sent a message for Polly. I saw as she entered my room that her cheeks no longer burned and that the fire had died out in her eyes. Her face was pale and its expression sad, but endearing. Enduring, aha. Polly, I said kindly, sit down. I would like to have some talk with you. The girl seemed taken by surprise. Her face warmed a little, and her eyes, which had been turned aside from mine, looked at me with a glance of inquiry. There, Polly, I said to a chair, sit down. She obeyed, but with a weary, patient air, like one whose feelings were painfully oppressed. Polly, I said, with kindness and interest in my voice, has anything troubled you of late? Her face flushed and her eyes reddened. If there has, Polly, and I can help you in any way, speak to me as a friend. You can trust me. I was not prepared for the sudden, strong emotion that instantly manifested itself. Her face fell into her hands and she sobbed out with a violence that startled me. I waited until she grew calm and then said, laying a hand kindly upon her as I spoke, Polly, you can talk to me as freely as if I were your mother. Speak plainly, and if I can advise you or aid you in any way, be sure that I will do it. I don't think you can help me any, ma'am, unless it's to bear my trouble more patiently, she answered in a subdued way. Trouble, child? What trouble? Has anything gone wrong with you? The manner in which this inquiry was made aroused her, and she said quickly and with feeling, Wrong with me? Oh, no, ma'am. But you are in trouble, Polly? Not for myself, ma'am, not for myself, was her earnest reply. For whom then, Polly? The girl did not answer for some moments. Then, with a long, deep sigh, she said, You never saw my brother Tom, ma'am. Oh, he was such a nice boy, and I was so fond of him. He had a hard place where he worked, and they paid him so little, that poor fellow. If I hadn't spent half my wages on him, he'd never have looked fit to be seen among folks. When he was 18, he seemed perfect to me. He was so good and kind, but, and the girl's voice almost broke down. Somehow he began to change after that. I think he fell into bad company. Oh, ma'am, it seemed as if it would have killed me the first time I found out that he had been drinking and was not himself. I cried all night for 2 or 3 nights. When we met again, I tried to talk with Tom about it, but he wouldn't hear a word, and for the first time in his life, got angry with his sister. It has been going on from bad to worse ever since, and I've almost given up hope. He's several years younger than you are, Polly. Yes, ma'am. He's only 10 years old when our mother died. I'm glad she is dead now. What I've never said before. There were only 2 of us, Tom and I nearly 6 years the oldest, felt like a mother as well as a sister to him. I've never spent much time on myself, as you know, and never had as good clothes as other girls with my wages. I took nearly everything for Tom. Oh dear, what is to come of it all? It will kill me, I'm afraid. A few questions on my part brought out particulars in regard to Polly's brother that satisfy me of his great lapse from virtue and sobriety. He was now past 20, and from all I could learn, was swift moving along the road to destruction. There followed a dead silence for some time after all the story was told. What could I say? The case was one in which it seemed that I could offer neither advice nor consolation, but it was in my power to show interest in the girl and to let her feel that she had my sympathy. She was sitting with her eyes cast down and a look of sorrow on her pale, thin face. I had not before remarked the signs of emaciation that touched me deeply. Polly, said I, with as much kindness of tone as I could express, is it the lot of all to have trouble and each heart know its own bitterness? But on some, the trouble falls with a weight that seems impossible to be borne. And this is your case. Yet it only seems so, for as our day is, so shall our strength be. If you cannot draw your brother away from the dangerous path in which he is walking, you can pray for him. And the prayer of earnest love will bring your spirit so near to his spirit that God may be able to influence him for good through presence of your spirit with his. Polly looked at me with a light, flashing in her face, as if a new hope had dawned upon her heart. "Oh, ma'am," she said, "I have prayed and do pray for him daily. But then I think God loves him better than I can love him and needs none of my prayers in the case. And so a chill falls over me and everything grows dark and hopeless, for of myself, I can do nothing. Our prayers cannot change the purposes of God towards anyone, but works by means, and our prayers may be the means through which he can help another." "How? How? Oh, tell me how, Mrs. Wilkins." The girl spoke with great eagerness. I had an important truth to communicate, but how was I to make it clear to her simple mind? I thought for a moment, and I said, "When we think of others, we see them." "In our minds?" "Yes, Polly. We see them in the eyes of our minds, and are also present with them as to our minds or spirits. Have you not noticed that on some occasions you suddenly thought of a person, and that in a little while afterwards that person came in?" "Oh, yes, I've often noticed and wondered why it should be so." "Well, the person in coming to see you, or in approaching the place where you were, thought of you so distinctly that she was present to your mind or spirit, and you saw her with the eyes of your mind. If this be the right explanation, as I believe it is, then if we think intently of others, and especially if we think with a strong affection, we are present with them so fully that they think of us and see our forms with the eyes of their spirits. And now, Polly, keeping this in mind, we may see how praying in tender love for one another may enable God to do him good. For you know that men and angels are co-workers with God in all good. On the wings of thought and love, angelic spirits who are present with us in prayer may pass with us to the object of our tender interest, thus gaining audience, as it were, stir the heart with good impulses. And who can tell how effectual this may be, if of daily act and long continuance? I paused to see if I was comprehended. Polly was listening intently, her eyes upon the floor. She looked up after a moment, her countenance calmer than before, but bearing so hopeful an aspect that I was touched with wonder. "I will pray for him morning, noon, and night," she said, "and if bodily I can't be near him, my spirit shall be present with him many times each day. Oh, if I could but draw him back from the evil into which he has fallen." A sister's loving prayer and the memory of his mother in heaven will prove, I trust, Polly, too potent for all his enemies. Take courage. In the silence that followed the last remark, Polly arose and stood as if there was something yet unsaid in her mind. I understood her and made the way plain for both of us. If I had known this before, it would have explained to me some things that gave my mind an unfavorable impression. You have not been like yourself for some time past. How could I, ma'am? Polly's voice trembled and her eyes again filled with tears. I never meant to displease you, but all is explained, said I, interrupting her. I see just how it is, and if I have said a word that hurt you, I am sorry for it. No one could have given better satisfaction in a family than you have given. I always try to do right, murmured the poor girl sadly. I know it, Polly. My tones were encouraging. And if you will forget the unkind way in which I spoke to you this morning and let things remain as they were, it may be better for both of us. You are not fit, taking your state of mind as it is now, to go among strangers. Polly looked at me with gratitude and forgiveness in her wet eyes. There was a motion of reply about her lips, but she did not trust herself to speak. Shall it be as it was, Polly? Oh, yes, ma'am. I don't wish to leave you, and particularly not now. I am not fit, as you say, to go among strangers, but you must bear with me a little. for I can't always keep my thoughts about me. When Polly retired from my room, I set myself to thinking over what had happened. The lesson went deeply into my heart. Poor girl, what a heavy burden rested upon her weak shoulders. No wonder that she bent under it. No wonder that she was changed. She was no subject for angry reproof, but for pity and forbearance, for she had come short in service or failed to enter upon her daily tasks with the old cheerfulness. No blame could attach to her, for the defect was of force and not of will. Ah, said I, as I pondered the matter, how little inclined are we to consider those who stand below us in the social scale, or to think of them as having like passions, like weaknesses, like hopes and fears with ourselves. We deal with them too often as if they were mere working machines, and grow impatient if they show signs of pain, weariness, or irritation. We are quick to blame and slow to praise, chary of kind words, but voluble in reproof, holding ourselves superior in station, but not always showing ourselves superior in thoughtfulness, self-control, and kind forbearance. Ah, me. Life is a lesson book, and we turn a new page every day. And that completed that entire chapter. So, we're getting, I don't remember when this was written, but we're getting a little bit of a peek into how working was 100 years ago, and classes and yeah, anyway, I'm glad things, I think, anyway, are better now. All right, you guys, I hope you have a blessed day, and I will see you next time.